Dear students, I'm here with the next story of yours, The Address by Marga Minko. Let's read about the author. Marga Minko, her real name was Sarah Manko. She was born on 31st March 1920. At the age of 95, she expired. She lived in Netherlands and her pen name is Marga Minko. She worked as a journalist. Her occupation is being journalist. And she wrote in the language Dutch. Dutch is the language of Holland. Holland is also known as Netherlands. The story is set there only. This story is about mother and daughter and their interaction with the other people around. To simplify the story, I will give you in few lines by relating it to you. Suppose you gave your mother's best beautiful silk sari to one of your friend who happens to come from some outside city and came to your city for some celebration or function, but she doesn't have some sari to wear. Along with that, you also gave a piece of precious jewelry in a as an accessory in an antique jewelry box. No, but due to some circumstances, in hurry, she couldn't return them. But after several years, when you meet her again, what will be her response? Will she ignore you or avoid talking to you? Maybe. Somewhat similar happens in this story. Let's discover that. The narrator is the daughter of Mrs. S. This S initial is used throughout the story. She is no more in this world. The writer went to Mrs. Darling's house in the search of the belongings of her mother, which which she has given her before the war, and they had to shift during the war. The narrator's mother, Mrs. S, gave her address to Mrs. Darling's years ago to narrator, as she saved her valuables in her house during the war. Mrs. Darling's house address is house number 46, Macroni Street, Holland. When she reached that address, Mrs. Darling did not seem to recognize her, and she was surprised to see the narrator there and alive after the war. Moreover, she rudely asked her to come another time. But the narrator understood that she is on the right address, as Mrs. Darling was wearing her mother's knitted green cardigan. It was now the second visit of the narrator to Mrs. Darling's house. This time she did not meet her but her daughter, who was 15-years old. The narrator sat down to wait for Mrs. Darling. All the things of her mother were there, scattered all over the house. The old-fashioned Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a name of Hebrew or Jewish festival of lights or feast of lights. Candle holder, very antique, cumbersome one. Their silverware or costly silver cutleries, and she could recognize their silver spoons, forks and knife, their vase, and was more vases of their antique zinc wall decorative plates, their woolen tablecloth with the same burn mark at one of the place, their crockery. Mrs. Darling's daughter poured tea from the same golden line lid teapot of her mother. The narrator found herself in the midst of things which belonged to her mother. But alas, they were very tastelessly arranged in a strange, unpleasant atmosphere. Then suddenly, narrator jumped up at It was the time for her train. She came out of the house and looked up the nameplate once again, the address. Mrs. Dorling, house number 46, Macaroni Street, Holland. The address needs to be forgotten. She rushed to board the train. The narrator resolved or determined to forget the address. She did not want to remember it any more, would not go back there again. Because no doubt objects that once belonged to her mother were all there. But alas, their true owner was no more in this world. It is easier, there is a quotation, it is easier to renounce the worldly possessions than it is to renounce the love of them. Worldly possessions are meaningless in front of the person, the bond of love which you share with your dear ones. I hope you understood the story. That's all in the story.